The universe kills quickly. That is its preferred method. It has had 13.8 billion years to refine the process, and efficiency is what it has settled on. A star collapses. A jet forms. A beam of gamma radiation, narrower than a surgeon's incision on the scale of a galaxy, lances outward at the speed of light. If something is in the way, it ceases to be. The whole transaction takes seconds, sometimes milliseconds. The universe does not linger, it does not savor. It administers, and it moves on. This is the standard gamma-ray burst. This is what the models predicted. This is what 50 years of observation confirmed, over and over, in the data, in the light curves, in the afterglows. A gamma-ray burst is the death rattle of a massive star. A star somewhere between 20 and 100 solar masses, burning through its fuel at a rate that makes our own sun look like a candle, finally exhausting its core. Fusion stops. The outward pressure that has been holding gravity at bay for millions of years collapses in an instant. The core implodes. In a fraction of a second, it forms a black hole, or a rapidly spinning neutron star with a magnetic field so intense it rewrites the surrounding physics. The outer layers of the star have not yet received the memo. They are still falling inward. They pile up. They form an accretion disk around the newborn engine. And that engine, in its first and most violent moments, launches a relativistic jet, a focused column of particles and energy moving at 99.9% of the speed of light, punching through the collapsing star and out into the universe beyond. That jet carries gamma radiation. It carries X-rays. It carries more energy than the sun will produce in its entire 10 billion year lifetime, released in a package that lasts between 2 milliseconds and, in extreme cases, a few hundred seconds. The beam is narrow, roughly 1 to 5 degrees of angular width. If Earth is not in that cone, we observe the burst as a faint exotic signal. We catalog it. We move on. If Earth is in that cone at close enough range, we do not observe anything at all. There is no observation. There is only consequence. Consider a planet, any planet with life on it, with an atmosphere, with oceans. Place it 10,000 light-years from a standard gamma-ray burst. The burst fires. The beam hits. In the first millisecond, the ozone layer absorbs a lethal dose of ultraviolet radiation re-emitted from the ionized atmosphere. In the following seconds, the nitrogen chemistry of the entire sky is disrupted. Nitrogen dioxide forms. The sky turns orange-brown. The ultraviolet index on the surface reaches values that have no biological reference point. It is not a number on any chart ever designed for living things. Complex surface life on the day side begins dying. The cells of every organism exposed to the open sky undergo DNA fragmentation on a scale that makes repair impossible. And then, it is over. The burst shuts off. Seconds, maybe minutes. The planet is damaged, severely, perhaps irreparably, but the beam is gone. The execution is complete. This is the mercy, the millisecond mercy of the standard gamma-ray burst. It is brutal, yes. It is indifferent, but it is fast. The universe in its standard operating procedure does not make you feel it for long. The fear response in a biological organism requires several hundred milliseconds to complete its circuit from stimulus to conscious awareness. A standard gamma-ray burst kills before that circuit closes. The organism does not experience the event. It simply ends. In July of 2025, we found out the universe is also capable of something else entirely. On July 2, 2025, at a moment that was, for the universe, entirely unremarkable, NASA's Fermi Gamma-ray Space Telescope detected a burst. The instrument flagged it. The burst advocate on duty received the alert. The data began to come in. What came in did not match the models. What came in was GRB 250702b. The initial signal was not even gamma rays. That is the first anomaly. X-ray emission from this source was detected a full day before the gamma rays arrived. Something at this location had been winding up, building toward the event, emitting high-energy radiation in the X-ray band for 24 hours before the main sequence began. The models had no category for this. It was filed, noted, flagged for follow-up. And then the gamma rays arrived, and they did not stop. By combining data from 5 high-energy space telescopes, Fermi, Swift, NuSTAR, Chandra, and the Einstein probe, the science teams confirmed a duration of approximately 25,000 seconds, 7 hours. The previous record holder for the longest gamma-ray burst ever recorded stood at roughly 15,000 seconds. GRB 250702b was not just a new record, it was nearly double the previous record. And it did not arrive as a single sustained emission. It arrived as 3 distinct bursting episodes, designated 250702b, 250702d, and 250702e from the same location in the sky, suggesting a progenitor system with internal periodicity, an engine that fired, paused, and fired again, not a clean detonation, a mechanism, something that refused to exhaust itself. JWST spectroscopy, conducted 51 days after the event began, placed the source galaxy at a redshift of Z equals 1.036. The light from this explosion began its journey when the universe was approximately 6 billion years old. It has been traveling for roughly 8 billion years to reach Fermi's detectors in low Earth orbit. The host galaxy itself is dusty, massive, and the burst emerged from a position nearly 1,900 light-years from the galactic center, near the edge of the galactic disk, an unusual address for this class of event. The energy released was catalogued by the team at Birmingham as equivalent to 1,000 suns shining continuously for 10 billion years. This is not a metaphor designed for human comprehension. It is a forensic measurement, a clinical statement of the energy budget. The beam that carried this energy was relativistic, collimated, and sustained, and the physical mechanism behind it remains, as of this writing, genuinely unresolved. Ultra-long gamma-ray bursts of tens of minutes to a few hours have been theorized before, arising from the collapse of massive blue supergiant stars. The extended stellar envelope gives the central engine more material to feed on, more time to accrete, more fuel to sustain the jet. GRB 250702b fits this framework in some ways and breaks it in others. The pre-burst X-ray emission, the repeating structure, the location at the galactic periphery. Some analyses have proposed an intermediate mass black hole consuming a stellar companion, a system where the black hole enters the star, consumes material over hours, and periodically reignites the jet as it works through different density layers. Each scenario explains part of the data. Each strains against the rest. The classification is, in the exact language of the scientific literature, a genuine stress test. What the classification does not change is the physics of the beam itself. Whatever made it, the beam existed. It fired for 7 hours. Somewhere in the universe, at a range of 10,000 light-years from a source like this, that beam would have intersected something. And what happens to that something is not a matter of debate. It is a matter of physics. It is a matter of sequential, irreversible process. It is a matter of documentation. Let us document it. Place the planet, Earth-like, ocean-bearing, atmosphere-bearing, magnetosphere intact, life present, complex, distributed, thriving. Position it 10,000 light-years from the engine of GRB 250702b. The beam arrives at the speed of light. There is no warning, no pre-flash, no detectable precursor radiation that travels faster than the beam itself. The first photon of the gamma-ray burst and the first photon of its precursor arrive together as a wall of radiation moving at the universal speed limit. There is no time to prepare, because there is no signal that can outrun the threat. The magnetosphere is the planet's outermost shield, a magnetic bubble generated by convection in the iron core, extending tens of thousands of kilometers into space, deflecting solar wind and cosmic radiation continuously. Against a standard cosmic ray particle, it is effective. Against a sustained beam of gamma-ray photons arriving at this intensity, it is cosmetically irrelevant. Gamma rays are not charged particles. Magnetic fields do not deflect them. The magnetosphere does not register this event in any meaningful way. The beam passes through it as if it does not exist. This is the first lesson of the event. The planet's primary defense system, the one that has been operating continuously for billions of years, offers zero protection. The gamma radiation strikes the upper atmosphere. The interaction is immediate and violent. Nitrogen and oxygen molecules at altitudes of 40 to 80 kilometers absorb the incoming photons and undergo photodissociation. The nitrogen oxides that form are not the gradual, decades-long accumulation associated with nuclear detonations or industrial pollution. They form in seconds, a planet-wide instantaneous injection of nitrogen oxide compounds into the stratosphere. The ozone layer, the thin chemical blanket of O3 molecules that filters ultraviolet radiation and has permitted surface life to exist since the Great Oxidation Event, does not deplete, it shatters. The catalytic destruction is so rapid, so total, so simultaneous across every square kilometer of the hemisphere facing the burst that the word depletion is a clinical understatement. The ozone column goes to zero, globally, in minutes. The sky changes color. To any organism on the surface with functional eyes, the sky would appear to shift from blue toward a deep, sickening violet, and then into a blinding white. This is the ionized upper atmosphere re-emitting absorbed energy as visible and ultraviolet light. It is beautiful the way a surgical incision is beautiful, precise, bright, and presaging only damage. The irradiance at the surface from ultraviolet radiation now measures in levels that have no biological context. Every unit of reference built for life on this planet was calibrated for a world with an ozone layer. Those units are no longer applicable. The global temperature begins to rise. Not through infrared heating in the first hour. The thermal effects of direct gamma absorption in the atmosphere have not yet propagated fully downward. The temperature rise in hour 1 is driven by the secondary radiation cascade. The ionized nitrogen and oxygen in the upper atmosphere are re-radiating energy downward into the troposphere. The troposphere itself is heating. The temperature gradient between the stratosphere and the surface, which normally drives circulation and weather, begins to invert. The atmospheric chemistry that has been stable for hundreds of millions of years is now operating in a regime it has never encountered. Surface organisms on the daylit hemisphere are dying. The ultraviolet flux reaching the surface exceeds by many orders of magnitude the lethal dose for any known DNA-based organism. Complex multicellular life, everything with a nervous system, everything with a membrane, everything that has not been specifically engineered by a billion years of evolution to withstand vacuum-adjacent radiation begins undergoing terminal cellular breakdown. The DNA fragmentation is systemic. The proteins are denaturing. The cell membranes are rupturing under osmotic shock driven by the ionizing cascade. This is not sunburn. This is not radiation sickness in the clinical sense. This is direct molecular disassembly. There is no treatment protocol because there is no surviving organism to treat. The beam continues. Hour 2 arrives. The beam does not pause. It does not cycle down. It does not give the planet a moment to integrate what has already happened. The engine 8 billion light-years away is still accreting. The jet is still feeding. The photons are still arriving. The same beam that began in hour 1 is simply the next 60 minutes of the same unbroken delivery. The thermal front has now descended into the lower atmosphere. The stratosphere, having absorbed enormous quantities of energy, is now radiating in the infrared. The troposphere is receiving this energy from above. The ocean's surface, on the day side, is receiving direct gamma and X-ray irradiance that deposits energy into the top meters of water. Water is an excellent absorber of high-energy photons. The ocean does not reflect this event. It drinks it. The surface temperature of the ocean on the daylit hemisphere begins rising toward boiling. This is not a gradual process. The energy deposition rate is not the same as pointing a large heat source at water. The gamma flux is penetrating into the water column, depositing energy simultaneously throughout the first few meters of depth rather than only at the surface. The water begins to flash boil from within. Not a rolling boil that starts at the bottom of a pot and rises, a volumetric conversion, section by section, of liquid water to steam, beginning across the entire irradiated ocean surface simultaneously. The steam released is not simply water vapor added to the atmosphere. It is superheated vapor, expanding explosively, displacing the existing atmosphere upward and outward, driving pressure gradients that no meteorological model designed for a living world has ever been asked to simulate. The pressure differential between the boiling day side and the relatively cooler night side drives wind systems. These are not wind systems in any conventional sense. These are supersonic shock fronts of superheated steam and displaced atmosphere racing from the terminator toward the night side at velocities measured in hundreds of meters per second, escalating toward the supersonic as the pressure differential widens. These storm systems carry no rain. They carry boiled ocean. They carry dissolved minerals. They carry the aerosolized remains of marine biology. The top of the ocean, where photosynthetic life has operated for billions of years, the phytoplankton, the algae, the surface layer organisms that form the base of every marine food chain, has been carbonized. The word is precise. Carbon-based organisms exposed to this energy flux undergo rapid pyrolysis. The organic matter does not simply die, it converts. It becomes char. The ocean's surface, where it has not yet flashed to vapor, is covered in a layer of carbonized biological material mixed with boiling water. This layer evaporates into the expanding storm system and is carried into the upper atmosphere, where it contributes to a thickening aerosol layer of carbon soot and steam that begins to block incoming radiation, but which also traps outgoing thermal radiation, adding a secondary thermal blanket over a planet that is already undergoing direct irradiation. The night side of the planet is experiencing this event indirectly. The atmospheric shock waves and steam fronts from the day side are arriving. The night side is not in direct beam. But the night side is no longer isolated from the event. The planet's atmosphere is one connected system, and what is happening on one hemisphere is now being transmitted through that system to the other. The temperature on the night side is rising, not as dramatically as the day side, but rising measurably, continuously, in the direction of lethality. Any organism that survived the first hour because it was sheltered from direct irradiation in a cave, deep in a forest, in a structure that provided physical shielding from the UV flux, is now facing a secondary threat that has no shelter solution. The temperature is climbing. The air chemistry is changing. The water supply is either being flash boiled or contaminated with the chemical byproducts of atmospheric photodissociation. The nitrogen oxide compounds raining back down from the stratosphere are producing nitric acid. The rain, where it falls, is acid, and it is warm, and it is becoming warmer. The beam continues. There is a psychology to extinction events that involves the concept of depth. The instinct to go underground is one of the oldest survival responses in the biological record. When the surface becomes lethal, you descend. The cave, the burrow, the basement, the bunker. Depth is shelter. Rock is armor. This instinct is not wrong. It has worked throughout evolutionary history for a sufficient range of threats. A volcanic ash cloud does not penetrate granite.
A nuclear detonation's blast wave attenuates with distance through solid rock. Ice Age cold does not reach the geothermal warmth at depth. Going underground has merit. Going underground has saved species before. It will not work here. The physics of what happens to a solid planet subjected to a continuous, unrelenting gamma-ray beam over 5 hours is not the physics of a surface event with a subsurface refuge. It is the physics of bulk material irradiation. The distinction is critical. In the first 2 hours, the surface and atmosphere absorbed the majority of the incoming energy. The surface layer heated. The crust, at depths of meters to tens of meters, remained a thermal buffer. The rock does not become immediately lethal at depth. If you are 1 kilometer underground, in hour 2, the ambient temperature may not yet have risen beyond survivable levels. You are in pain from every other aspect of your situation: the chemical changes in the air you are breathing, the loss of your water supply, the acoustic horror of the surface events transmitting as seismic vibration into the rock. But you are thermally within a survivable range. Hour 3 changes the accounting. The crust of a rocky planet is a thermal conductor, not a fast one. Granite, basalt, the common crustal materials have low thermal conductivity compared to metals, but they conduct. They conduct continuously. And when the surface temperature is no longer 30 degrees Celsius, but is approaching 500 degrees Celsius and climbing, the thermal gradient through the rock begins driving heat downward into the crust. The law of thermal conduction does not have an exception clause for inhabited bunkers. The heat moves toward the cool. Every meter of rock between the surface and the underground shelter is now a resistor in a circuit that has been connected to a very large source of energy. By hour 3, in any underground structure shallower than several hundred meters, the ambient temperature is measurably, lethally rising. The rate of rise depends on the local geology, on the thermal conductivity of the surrounding rock, on the depth of the structure, but the direction of change has only one value: up. By hour 4, structures at 100 meters depth are becoming incompatible with biological survival. The temperature at that depth in standard crustal rock under these surface conditions and this duration of irradiation is approaching limits that no mammalian biology can sustain. The deep bunker hypothesis, the idea that sufficient depth provides sufficient protection, requires bunkers deeper than any that have ever been constructed. The deepest mine shaft ever drilled by human civilization descends approximately 12 kilometers. The heat begins to affect survivability at a fraction of that depth within this time window. The organisms that went underground for shelter did not escape the event. They delayed encountering it by a matter of hours, inside a structure that was converting itself, slowly but thermodynamically inevitably, into a closed oven. Hour 5. The surface is now a different planet. The atmosphere, what remains of it, is a superheated mixture of nitrogen oxides, water vapor, carbon compounds, and the outgassing of the crust itself. The upper crust is beginning to release mineral gases as rocks undergo thermal decomposition. Carbonates in limestone and chalk formations release CO2. Hydrated minerals release their bound water as steam. The outgassing adds to the atmospheric composition and contributes to the thermal blanket effect. The planet is now driving its own heating through feedback mechanisms, independent of direct irradiation, though the direct irradiation has not stopped. The organisms underground are dying of thermal exposure. They are dying of hypoxia as the chemistry of the air in their sealed environments changes. They are dying of the mechanical effects of the seismic activity generated by the differential thermal expansion of the crust. They are not dying from the beam directly. The beam, at this depth, contributes only marginally to the thermal load. They are dying from what the beam did to the surface and what the surface is now doing to the rock and what the rock is now doing to them. They are dying from the physics of thermal conduction through the only shield they had. The bunkers did not fail because they were not deep enough, though they were not deep enough. The bunkers failed because depth in this scenario is only a delay, and a delay of hours is not a survival strategy when the event lasts 7. The beam continues.
By hour 6, the planet is in a state that has no analog in the geological record of any known living world. The atmosphere is gone in any meaningful sense. Not depleted, not chemically altered, gone.
The thermal energy deposited into the atmospheric column over 5 hours has raised the average kinetic energy of the atmospheric molecules to the point where the escape velocity of the planet is no longer a barrier for a significant fraction of them. The lighter molecules, hydrogen, helium, the lighter fraction of the nitrogen and oxygen that was not already converted to heavier compounds, have been escaping to space since hour 2. By hour 6, the process has accelerated. The remaining atmosphere is a thin, hot, chemically toxic shell that is actively eroding into space. From a distance, the planet now resembles a comet. Its atmosphere, ionized and energized beyond the point of gravitational retention, is streaming outward on the beam-facing side like a tail. The planet is exhaling its entire atmospheric inventory into space in a process called atmospheric sputtering and hydrodynamic escape. This process has happened to planets in the past, over billions of years, under the influence of stellar evolution. Here, it is happening in hours. The oceans are gone, not boiled away in a gentle sense.
The ocean basins are exposed to direct irradiation and to surface temperatures that have risen past the vaporization point of water. What remains in the ocean basins is a combination of mineral salt deposits, the dissolved solids that were in the water before the water left, and the remnant biological carbon from the carbonized surface life. The salt beds are heating. At these surface temperatures, certain salt compounds are approaching their melting points. The ocean floor, where silicate rock underlies the salt, is heating toward temperatures at which silicate minerals begin to undergo phase changes. The boundary layer between the ocean basin floor and what was once the water column is becoming a geological record of a 7-hour event, encoded in mineral phase transitions that will persist in the rock for as long as the rock persists. The crust is being sterilized in the literal absolute sense of the word. Sterilization is the elimination of all viable biological entities from a medium. The medium here is the top several kilometers of a planetary crust. The temperature gradient has now propagated deep enough that no biological chemistry can operate at any depth accessible to any organism that was on or near the surface of this planet before the event began. The spore formers, the extremophiles, the thermophilic archaea that live at volcanic vents and have survived every mass extinction in the geological record by retreating into their hydrothermal chemistry. They are dying too, not from the beam, from the temperature. The crust is now a heat reservoir that has been charging for 6 hours and will not cool for centuries. The surface of the planet, where the beam strikes directly, is experiencing something beyond conventional thermal geology. At these radiation intensities, over this duration, the upper layer of the silicate crust is not merely hot. The gamma radiation is interacting with the atomic structure of the mineral lattice. The ionizing radiation is displacing electrons, creating lattice defects, altering the crystalline structure of the rock. The feldspars, the pyroxenes, the olivines that make up the bulk of the crust, they are being structurally modified at the atomic level. This is radiation damage in the material science sense. The rock is not melting in all locations. In some locations, the surface layer is being converted into an amorphous, non-crystalline form. It is becoming glass, not through heat alone, but through the combined effect of thermal energy and radiation-induced lattice disruption. The salt plains of what were the ocean floors are melting into glass. The silicate surface is being glazed. The planet is being sealed. What was a porous, geologically active, life-bearing surface is being laminated with a radiation-formed vitreous layer. This is not a metaphor. This is the physical chemistry of extended high-energy beam irradiation on silicate and mineral surfaces. The planet is being given a new surface, a new geological layer that will be the first stratum in whatever record this rock carries forward from this event. Hour 7. The engine has been accreting for 7 hours. It has fed on the stellar material available to it and driven the jet continuously.
This is the final hour of the event. There is nothing left to preserve. There is nothing left to destroy. The work is done. What remains on the surface is a hot, airless, glass-streaked rock rotating silently in whatever stellar system once nurtured it. The star that this planet orbited, the star that provided the solar energy for its photosynthesis, the warmth for its liquid water, the gravitational anchor for its orbit, continues burning. It has no knowledge of what has happened to its companion. It will continue to shine on a dead surface for billions of years more, a star with nothing to illuminate. The beam is still on, and then it is not. Step back. Step very far back. The planet we just documented was a thought experiment constructed to illustrate a specific interaction. The actual GRB 250702b originated from a source 8 billion light-years away. It was detected here at Earth as a signal. We were not in the beam. We were outside the cone. We received the photons that scattered or were emitted sideways from the main jet, the afterglow, the X-ray emission from the surrounding shock. The main beam went elsewhere. The main beam went in one direction, collimated, narrow, relativistic, and it went that way for 8 billion light-years. Consider what lies along the path of a beam that travels for 8 billion light-years. A gamma-ray burst beam is not wide. It is, as stated, between 1 and 5 degrees of angular width in most models. At cosmological distances, this geometry describes a long, thin cone, a needle of lethal radiation sweeping through the universe at the speed of light. But a needle pressed through a tapestry will pass through many threads. In a universe that contains an estimated 2 trillion galaxies, a line drawn through it in any direction will intersect, statistically, many of them. In the 7 hours that GRB 250702b's beam was active, that beam was already traveling across space. It began its journey when the universe was 6 billion years old. It has been traveling for 8 billion years. In the final 7 hours of its journey, the final 7 hours before its leading edge struck Fermi's detectors, it was still crossing space. Every second of those final 7 hours, it was arriving at new destinations simultaneously. The leading edge of the beam hitting our instruments was not the whole beam, it was just the forwardmost photons. Behind them, the beam extended backward along its path for the full 7 light-hours of its duration. A 7 light-hour column of lethal radiation moving as a unit through space. Every star system that this column intersected during its billions of years of travel received the event relevant to its position in the beam's duration. If a star system was at a position intersected during hour 3 of the 7-hour event, it received an hour 3 dose. If it was positioned such that the full 7-hour beam swept through it, it received the complete event. If a planet in that system was in the beam path, the process we have just documented occurred, all of it, or the relevant fraction. We cannot know how many star systems this beam intersected. We cannot survey the path. The beam originated from a galaxy 8 billion light-years ago and arrived here in a direction that, were we to reverse it and trace it back, would take us through billions of years of cosmic expansion and structural evolution. There is no census available. There is no list of casualties. The deaths, if any occurred along that path, are invisible to us. The extinctions, if any happened billions of years ago in star systems we will never observe in sufficient detail to see the evidence. A dead planet, stripped of its atmosphere, covered in radiation-formed glass, looks from 8 billion light-years away like nothing in particular. The universe does not mark its sites of execution. What we know is the geometry. The beam was real. The duration was real. The energy was real. A straight line from its source to us passes through a universe full of structure, full of galaxies, each containing hundreds of billions of stars, many of them with planets, many of those planets in habitable zones, some of those almost certainly bearing something that could be called life or the precursor of life. The beam did not care about any of this. It did not modulate its intensity for the presence of inhabited systems. It did not shorten its duration because something was in the way. The physics of the jet do not include a subroutine for mercy. There is no clause in the equations of accretion disk dynamics or relativistic jet formation that accounts for the complexity of what it might be terminating. The beam carved a tunnel, an invisible, perfect, sterile tunnel through the cosmos, a tunnel that was 7 light-years long and as wide as the beam's angular spread at each distance. A tunnel lined on both ends with death and nothing else. This tunnel exists right now, structurally, as the historical record of which regions of space experienced this event. It is not visible, it cannot be mapped, but it is real in the same sense that the event itself was real, physically, thermodynamically, and forensically. This is the 10,000 light-year scar, extended to 8 billion years of actual scale, a scar on the body of the universe that the universe itself does not notice. It has no mechanism for noticing. It has no mechanism for anything. It is not a predator. It is not malevolent. It is simply a set of processes operating according to the rules of physics, and sometimes those processes produce this.
The beam shuts off. Not dramatically, not with a fade or a dying pulse. The accretion disk has exhausted the material available to it, or the central engine has transitioned to a lower energy state, or the jet has precessed out of alignment, or some other physical transition has occurred in the progenitor system 8 billion light-years away. The mechanism is, at this moment, still contested in the literature. What is not contested is the result. The emission stops. The photons that were in transit at the moment of cutoff continue traveling because photons do not stop, but no new photons are being added to the beam. The leading edge of the cutoff, traveling at the speed of light, will eventually reach every point the beam was heading toward and announce, in the only way physics allows, that the event is over. In our thought experiment, the announcement arrives at the planet. The beam's terminating edge crosses the surface, the irradiation ceases, the gamma flux drops to background. The direct energy deposition into the remaining atmosphere, thin and toxic as it is, stops. There is a moment, and it is important to note that this is only a moment, a forensic point of transition with no physical significance to the planet, in which the beam is gone and the aftermath begins. The aftermath is not recovery. Let us be precise about this. The aftermath is continuation. The processes that the beam set in motion, the thermal conduction through the crust, the atmospheric escape into space, the cooling of the surface from its irradiated peak toward a new, lower equilibrium, these continue without the beam. They will continue for centuries, for geological epochs, long after the last photon of GRB 250702b has passed. The planet will cool. It will not cool to what it was. It has no atmosphere to retain or redistribute heat. It has no oceans to buffer temperature swings. It is a bare rock, rotating in space, radiating its absorbed heat into the vacuum at the rate that the Stefan-Boltzmann law allows, which is slow and which does not constitute recovery. The geological glass on the surface will persist. The radiation damage in the crystalline structure of the upper crust will persist, encoded as mineral defects, as altered crystal chemistry, as isotopic anomalies produced by the neutron flux components of the event. If, billions of years from now, something were to visit this rock and bring the instruments and the knowledge necessary to read these signatures, it would find the record. It would find a layer in the geology marking a single event in a single 7-hour window. It would find glass where there was silicate. It would find salt where there was ocean. It would find carbon where there was biology. It would read the signatures and know with forensic certainty what had happened here. But nothing will visit. There is no mechanism in physics for the universe to produce investigators. It produces events, and it produces records of events, and it produces nothing else.
The record will sit in the rock. The rock will orbit its star. The star will eventually exhaust its own fuel and expand and perhaps consume the rock, erasing the record. Or it will fade to a cold remnant, and the rock will become a dark, frozen, glass-surfaced object, drifting in the outer dark, carrying its geological testimony to nowhere, for no one, forever. This is what the universe is. Not a machine of creation, though it creates. Not a stage for complexity, though complexity arises. It is a system. A physical system operating according to rules that have no authors and no intentions. In the operation of those rules, stars collapse, jets form, beams fire, sometimes for milliseconds, sometimes for seconds. And on July 2, 2025, we confirmed that sometimes for 7 hours. 7 hours is, in the context of cosmological time, a rounding error. It does not appear on any timescale used to describe the evolution of galaxies or the life cycle of stars. It is too small to plot. But for a planet and everything on it, 7 hours is the entire remainder of time. 7 hours is the complete duration of the event that transitions a biosphere from existing to not existing, with no intermediate state and no reversal. The universe is not cruel. Cruelty requires intent. The universe has no intent. It has only process. And the process includes GRB 250702b, which lasted 7 hours, which is nearly double the previous record, which came from a source so distant that we will never observe its location in sufficient detail to understand it fully, and which carved its passage through the cosmos without awareness of anything it may have ended. We found out in July of 2025 that the universe can take its time. We found no evidence that it has ever hesitated.